Hey, Kansas Gun Com. It's good to see you guys, sort of, tonight. It's awesome to have a good live fire, and tonight I think is going to be exceptional. We have a great panel, and we're going to be talking about a great subject. That's home defense. We're going to do some rapid fire, actually, during tonight's stuff. But first of all, let's go down the line and kind of introduce ourselves. We normally do that. It's kind of the everybody should be kind of familiar with who all's on tonight. But I'll start with Clint from Williams Gunworks, man, and then we'll go to Steve, Derek, and Chuck. As I'm looking at you, that's what I'm seeing on my screen. So, Clint, why don't you start out, man?
Okay, first off, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good deal. I'm not running any video because of my connection as well, so for that I apologize. But I'm basically a gun builder, build custom guns out of Wichita, Kansas. Do handgun and defensive instructing. Been doing all that now since about 2010 time frame, about in there. Yeah, that's about it. I make cool stuff and get to teach people how to use it.
Awesome. Steve?
Oh, God. Steve Fisher, let's see. Been some form or fashion of the industry now for about 20 years. Instructor, trainer, teacher, former law enforcement background, worked for Magpul for about 3.5, 4 years as an instructor, firearms consultant within the industry, as well as optics manufacturers, sighting systems, you name it. I've got my hands in kind of a little bit of everything from soft good lineup for low profile, I would say, carry for certain weapon systems to, yeah, it's pretty much all purpose right now. It's just all blurs together.
Gotcha. Derek, you're going with that video tonight too.
Yeah, because some of us don't have great reception apparently at home. My name is Derek. I am a helpless admin sometimes at Kansas Gun Com. Basically, my background, I spent time in the military, but that really doesn't apply here. Pretty much the two things that apply here is I'm a normal person and I live in a home. So I'm here to, at least tonight, kind of monitor chat and listen to the people that are way smarter than me that are sitting here.
Chuck, you want to tell us about yourself, man?
So I'm wondering who it is that's supposed to be way smarter, because that's must be somebody else on the panel. Chuck Haggard. In my 32nd year of law enforcement, retired from Topeka Police Department after 28 years. Do some part-time work up in Jackson County as a deputy, Jackson County, Kansas. Currently work for Metro Topeka Airport Authority. Been a trainer for firearms trainer, defensive tactics trainer in the police world for a very long time. Trainer for National Law Enforcement Training Center, adjunct instructor with Strategos International, and then I have my own training company I started since I left the Topeka PD, Agile Training and Consulting.
And we are missing Buck Petticord right now from Defense Midwest because he's running late. He is also a farmer along with an instructor. And then John from Crusader Arms Channel. He's out doing soccer with the kids right now. And so he'll be with us when he gets in from doing soccer with the kids. So there you go. First of all, I wanted to start out with home defense. Kind of a rapid fire question from everybody. That is, and this is of course probably on the top of everybody's mind, what is your home defense weapon and why? And that's, I just want to go down the line, what it is and why, and that's how I want to start out, and then we'll kind of work our way down from there. So, Clint, what is your home defense weapon and why?
Okay, so my home defense gun is the same thing that I carry every day. It's a Glock 19 with a Trijicon RMR and a Surefire X300 weapon light. it just seemed natural to me to keep him beside the bed and close to me for the home. So, you know, I've got an AR that's real close to me also, but it, you know, I don't shoot the AR as much as I shoot my pistol, and I don't carry my AR around every day. So the handgun is natural. So that's my go-to.
Okay. Steve?
It varies for me. I'm in a unique situation where I'm home alone, no children in the house. Generally, primarily, it's the gun that is on me throughout the daytime. That is my go-to gun. It is one of the most accessible, most convenient. Because of where I live, very rural, structure that I'm in, I am afforded the luxury of having long guns as well stationed throughout the house. They vary from shotguns to ARs. So I'm kind of multi-layered approach completely across the board. The bedstand gun actually that is there now is a FNX Tactical 45 with an RMR on it and a Surefire X300 Ultra. Mainly because, well, I don't have a holster for that gun, and a nightstand's a great place for that pistol. On top of that, there's an M4 that's configured, as well as an 870 Vang Comp shotgun in the master suite.
Derek, what is your choice and why?
I knew Steve was going to have a Vang Cup somewhere hanging around.
Always.
I figured it
Always. Multiple.
For me, pretty much usually, like, I think Steve brought up a good point, like usually the one that's on me. That's the primary. Right now, I've got a Glock 23 with a Surefire on it that's typically on me. The actual home defense gun for me in any other scenario would probably be my AR. It's a 16-inch Daniel defense gun. It's got a light on it because lights are important, because don't shoot what you can't see. Sorry, apparently there's something in my throat here. So I recently kind of switched back to a pistol for most of the time. Our old house was much larger, which afforded me a little more opportunity with the carbine. I'm obviously very used to one. I shot one for a long time, put a lot of rounds through them, so it's a very natural thing for me to use. I get 3 points of contact with it. I've got 30 rounds plus another magazine, gives me 60 total. I can carry all kinds of stuff with it. The only difference is I can't do one-handed, but I don't have kids, so for right now, the one-handed manipulation with a firearm is not my biggest priority. So those are my two. I know we're going to get into ballistics later and the caliber conversation, because that's how our world works. So we'll talk about that later, but that's another consideration.
Chuck, you're next, man. What do you choose and why?
I do something very similar to what Steve's talking about. Is it's typically the gun I happen to be carrying. My duty gun is a Glock 17. My off-duty gun, most commonly used concealed carry, is a Glock 19. So those would often be on me or very close by. So, you know, I think the closest gun availability a gun is more important than anything. I have ARs, very familiar with the weapon system. I've been a big advocate. I was advocating patrol rifles, self-defense rifles, way before it was cool, you know, in the 80s. I have shotguns as well. I'm a big fan of shotguns. I don't think they're as antiquated as some people want to make them out to be. They do really good work if you know what to do or how to run them. So I've kind of got a mix, but the truth be told, the closest gun to me is typically a handgun. So that's probably what what's going to end up being used. Or if it's a situation where you're moving through the house, maybe you want to check out a noise or something like that, handgun and a handheld flashlight are going to be very useful things to have.
Well, I'm glad I'm not alone then. Sounds like I fit right in. I chose to go the same route. My carry gun's a Glock 17. Put my handheld light right next to it on the nightstand. I do have an M4, or well, I should say an M4, an AR-15. We'll just put it that I have an AR sitting within 10 feet of me as well. That's secured. So we do have kids in our house sometimes, so we do have to secure things. That makes a difference. My wife also has her pistol that's accessible within our bedroom too. So and I like that, the familiarity with what you're carrying. That was what it came down for me too. That feel of being able to pick up that, for in my case, that 17, and have that, that feels, I don't know, when you're half awake in the middle of the night, that feel of familiarity, I think for me anyhow, does a little bit, but that's one of the things. I saw the caliber debate. It's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm looking over here at the chat, so it's going to be fun tonight. But as far as gear goes, I want to move, just kind of segue into that with gear. A lot of guys, man, they get the Gucci'd up 870 or the Gucci'd up 500 or AR-15 or AR pistol, man, and they've got it totally gone. You know what I'm saying? And how do y'all, what's y'all's philosophy on that, as far as, is there just you going too far? Are you thinking a little too much, or is it really necessary? So anybody want to take that up?
I'll jump.
Yeah.
Or Chuck can take it. Go
ahead. Claude Werner and I have talked about this quite a bit, and if you look at the history of home defense weapons, firearms in home defense, if you start flipping through the armed citizen part of the NRA, and you're going to find an extraordinary number of like 87-year-old grandmothers shooting burglars with 22 rifles or shotguns or whatever the case may be. So I think the hardware is vastly, vastly secondary to the software. When you see positive outcomes, negative outcomes, the guns almost never have anything to do with them. What goes right is they got mindset and the willingness to do work. And when it goes wrong, it's when they're doing stupid stuff like shooting at shadows, and then they kill their kid that's sneaking home from being out late drinking beer with their friends, things like that. So the mindset, the training, the hardware, truthfully, for the most part, I think like putting Mexican cartel people in prison. I felt a lot better having an M4 close by when I lay down. But if I had a break barrel H&R shotgun or a Ruger 1022 or something like that, would I lose sleep at night over my home defense weaponry? Not in the least. Not in the least.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, because I do have a New England break action 12 gauge, but I have it over here in the safe. So. I wanted to bring this article up that just came out today. It actually happened in Memphis last week. Last Thursday night, that two individuals were trying to break into a Memphis home, and the lady was home by herself, or I think her husband was at work, if I remember right. And they kept beating on the door late at night. And then they finally went around to a side door. She went and retrieved the shotgun. And you can look at it at Truth About Guns is where it was put at. And she stuck the shotgun. They broke the window in, I think, on the secondary entrance of the home. And she stuck the shotgun out a little bit, which may not be tactically correct. But when she done that, the individual that was on the other side of it saw the barrel, and they scooted for get out of Dodge, because they didn't want to be on the other end of it. and she had no training at all. It was just, go get my husband's shotgun, and you can actually see the video on Truth About Guns and stuff. So it does bring up, I would ask this question of Chuck and maybe and Steve too, of that training aspect. Don't y'all think that there's an innate thing of the fight or flight that turns on, whether it be a female, male, or whatever, trained, untrained, that says, I'm not dying, and so I'm gonna do whatever it takes to live, and that kind of kicks on, or am I going down the wrong road with that thought?
I don't think necessarily that it's a, that's what I'm really looking for. Not a trained or acquired, I won't even say skill set or the mindset. The fact of the matter is humans and their ability to think through, fight through things to survive is a very natural thing. Now, granted, you also have a segment that will always be food. You will always have the special children that will just lay down and die. You will be very hard pressed, though, to find somebody, take, for instance, some of the areas around me that are more urban. We had a rash of shootings, home invasions here 2 years ago that involved, elderly females. This is in the city of Detroit. I mean, flat out. And the one woman literally took on 5 attackers with a high point carbine that was rusted up. And she won it. She killed like 3 of the 5. Good on her. Yay. Awesome on her. She's like, not me. I was like, good on you, Grandma. It has a lot to do, I think, with the areas that you're brought up in, the livelihood that you've been brought up in. All these things matter. But the bottom line really becomes people's willingness to survive or prevail through certain things drives them a lot harder than what most people would consider the whole, developing a combat mindset or survival mindset. It's already there. It's just how it's fostered through your upbringing, your experiences, your jobs, your lives, all these things that foster that up until your adulthood. Those are what really matter. The thing is, you'll never turn a rabbit into a hawk. So,
anybody else?
No, I think that was a pretty good summary, I think.
And this question is I know this is probably pervasive more than we think, and it's kind of selfish for me, for my dad and my mom. My dad's 82 years old, but he's been a gun owner and hunter all his life, and so on and so forth. And my grandpa was a cop and a gunsmith, but so I grew up in that type of a situation. Steve's got a wild.
My 85-pound attack Rottweiler behind me that I've got is finally discovered the deer in the front yard. So he's a little. I'm like, what is going on over there? And there's 2 whitetails standing out here, and he's just whatever, being a dog.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But my dad, being 82 years old, he's had both shoulder joints replaced, and then he's also had both hands operated on, one twice, and he has a little bit of a shake from just being 82 years old, and so he can't shoulder any kind of rifle. Well, at 22, he can shoulder a 22, but anything above that, it will literally blow out his shoulder. And so his plan is his 22 pistol that he has, and he has a 38 as well, 38 revolver. But that's still, there's a little bit of shake going on, and you're dealing with gutter sights, and all that type of thing. There's a lot of older folks out there, and I mean, I'm 42, and we got to look after our folks here. You guys that are in the professional realm, I mean, what would you say for those folks? And they're the people being taken advantage of,
There are ways around some of this. As far as the sighting, one of the first guys that I know that was into lasers on handguns was Jim Cirillo. And a lot of people might not know that Jim was suffering from macular degeneration. He talked about how he couldn't see the sights, so putting putting a laser on the target was very, very helpful. There are lasers for things like Ruger, a couple of Ruger 22 target pistols, very reliable gun. If you pick good ammunition, you can do good work. I personally worked a home invasion that was stopped in its tracks by the immediate application of a magazine out of a Browning Buckmark pistol. All three of the suspects decided after they started taking multiple small caliber gunshot wounds that they had someplace else to be, like right away. I have helped set up clients with Ruger 1022s. There are parts you can put on a 1022 that allow you to mount a light and a laser. And the Ruger 25 round mags are.
Whoop. Did we drop it?
Being around, it's going to stand in the middle of a fuselage of a whole bunch of something like CCI mini mags coming out of the 25 round mags. This is a topic on Craig Douglas's website that Claude Werner had brought up. He called the little old man gun. He had his dad's concealed carry gun ended up being a modified Beretta 22 Lotto. If you look at what's available on the market today, and you're not worried about concealed carry, there's a lot of options out there that will work really well that may be unconventional from the normal like combat handgun or the types of things you see in classes a lot.
And that was one of the things I told my father was, he has a 22 rifle. I said, well, Dad, why don't you move to the rifle? Because it gives you 3 points of contact rather than that pistol, because he does some, man, when he goes to pour a cup of coffee, you're like wanting to help him out type of thing. And I love him. I mean, my dad's he's next to my wife, my best friend. And well, let me also give a backstory. Their house has been tried to be burglarized twice while we were home. So this is not something that's just a never going to happen type of thing. I mean, this has literally been reality in our home when I was growing up. And and my dad's not one to back down. I mean, he'll just flat out tell you, I'm going to blow your brains out. You walk in my house, I'm going to blow your brains out, And, but I was curious about that, and I thought about the 1022 and some things. And so that does give some ideas. And the laser, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll highly echo Chuck's thoughts on that and Claude's and some others. I used to teach a class on alternative weapons. For a while here, I had a group of what most people consider to be handicapped, elderly, so forth and so on, that conventional guns were not going to work for them. So, it was everything from 1022 rifles, laser sights on them. I mean, I had a whole array of just amazing things that showed up out of the woodwork, these people. Talking about some of the elderly issues with the shakes and dealing with that, which is very real, was taking it from a barricade position, such as, okay, hey, Dad, whatever is in the bedroom, things are happening at nighttime, a typical scenario. One of my clients, we had set up with a set of shooting sticks, a tripod shooting stick setup. With the laser on the one side of the bed. He was alone, elderly, really hard problem with Parkinson's. I won't say elderly within the terms of elderly, but at the time frame, I was like, well, elderly, 60s. Now I'm almost there. Another 20 years. I'll be there really soon. But for me, it was, okay, how can we alleviate the problems, them being uncontrollable with the gun? And that control point was to put the gun in a set of $50 shooting stick / tripod setup that most hunters can buy at Cabela's. Not ideal. They weren't going to be portable. The person wasn't going to be portable. The portable gun was literally what did we have for the gun? It was a Smith & Wesson 22A pistol. Not the most reliable gun, but it's a gun that they had that they shot well with a rail type laser mounted on the top, because the 22As had pick rail across the top for red dots for mounting a scope. So we mounted it on top of the gun, so when they pick up the gun, they could activate the laser, gun could come to a high chest compress ready position or a chest compress ready position that would afford them some stability of the hands tighter to the body to alleviate the shakes. Have the red dot pistol was already in retention position for close confines to the house. It worked out very well. The internet is full of garbage with this, especially of recent, of all the bravado, chest bumping awesomeness super studs. Newsflash, it's not about you, superhero. It never has been. It never will be until you're in your 60s, 70s and busted up like myself, Chuck, and some of these other guys where, you know, I spent a period of time where my hands were so busted up I could barely hold and control a pistol. You know, my go-to, honestly, like my cripple gun for when I'm at that point is a Keltec PMR 30 22 mag. And it's an amazing gun. Me and Mike Pannone talk about it all the time because he has one and it's just so much fun. But I've got 30 rounds of 22 mag CCI Gold Dot coming at you. Welcome.
I looked at that very gun for Dad. Yeah.
It's an easy slide to actuate. It works good. You know, even the Ruger, you know, pistol, the whatever it is, the LCR revolver in 22 mag, 9 rounds of 22 mag on board with a good trigger. Laser grip's available for it. Not ideal. Better than a sharp stick.
I just looked up the Smith & Wesson M&P Compact 22.
Yes.
Claude told me that his is extraordinarily reliable. Good trigger, and I wanted to make sure it has a dust cover rail, just like you know, service handguns do. So mounting a laser light combo, something like that would be pretty easy to pull off. And you know, the gun is easy to manipulate, cheap to feed, and if you feed it good ammo, something like mini mags, stingers, etc., then you can do good work with it.
Hey, Patrick from Firearm Rack is on here, and he wanted to know what you guys thought about comps and whether they're worthwhile within home defense.
Is that little Patrick?
It is. It is Patrick.
Tell Patrick to stop it. Just tell him to go home. I've answered this 100 times for Patrick. Tell Patrick to go away.
But he did suggest the 380 Easy, the Shield 380 Easy.
Yes.
Which is I've dealt with that gun actually. And,
I actually like the Shield 380 Easy to the point of where I bought one for some clients to use and have. But comps, tell them we'll get to that later.
Yeah, you know, and the next thing I wanted to morph into was, and I know this is your wheelhouse, Steve, is red dots at night. How important? Now, see, I'm diabetic, by the way, and so my vision is being affected by that. And as I get older, it's going to go worse. And you're wearing glasses too, and Chuck wears glasses. You know, most of us either wear glasses or contacts. And if I've actually trained without my glasses on, and if at 5 yards, I mean with a white light I can identify and everything, but actually putting on target, I have trouble because I have 2 stigmatisms and so on and so forth. What about the red dot? So
starting back through history of these things, my first red dot pistol was in 1999. A Smith & Wesson 5906. Chuck's over there probably laughing going, I had a 5906. We all had a 5906. It was a stupid gun, but you could build a deck with it and still shoot somebody.
I carried one of those for 20 years.
I know. It was a great gun. I still have one. It's an amazing pistol. I love it. 5906 with a Tasco Optima 2000. That was my first cool kid gun. And this progressed through the 2000s on and on and on as technology developed with these systems. It is a game changer for most people, dependent on the type of stigmatism they have in their eyes. Some people, even with their glasses off with a red dot, see 3 red dots and tell them shoot the one in the middle. It's that easy. Shoot the dot in the middle. So it becomes also, is the dot too small? Is your intensity set correctly, incorrectly? Again, they're not foolproof. They've come a long way away from when I started shooting prototypes of the RMR in 2006-07, before anybody even knew that unit was coming out. So there could be problems with that still, even with certain stigmatisms. Like my vision, my problem is up here, right close. My distance vision, phenomenal, not a problem, but it's for reading everything up close. So my rear sight isn't really a big issue to be an issue at all. But the red dot can help with things. But one, you have to be able to hold the gun steady enough to use it, because your gun moves the same amount, red dot or not. You just see it because it's perceived more because the dot is projected and it's visible. They're beneficial in low light. They're beneficial in lighting transitions from dark rooms to light rooms. Transitional lighting spaces with the use of white light, either weapon light or handheld, which I'm a huge handheld proponent. But again, it could be, do I need a 1 MOA dot? Do I need a 3.5 MOA dot? Do I need the 6 MOA dot? Depending on your eyesight and how you see things. I always tell people, hey, when in doubt, err on the side of caution. Go to an RMR 07 with the larger 6.5 MOA dot. It's pretty much the same exact size as a Trijicon HD front sight, which is a 145 width. It's about the best you're going to get and to be able to deal with. And a lot of that can also be dealt with by the position of either, hey, are you shooting at full extension, or are you shooting at a somewhat compressed position, which the red dot affords you that ability to do so. Compromise shooting positions, or based on your eyesight and abilities and what you see. Without glasses, for some people, it is still really hard. So not an absolute, hey, this is going to fix everyone. There are always going to be those cases where it just doesn't matter, where guess what will work, though, for those people? A laser. Where a projected beam that is projecting out past what people's perception is of a red dot on a pistol. But that projected image getting out past is often visible for them, especially when it's in conjunction with a weapon light or a handheld light.
What kind? I mean, what brand? If we were suggesting here, what brands would be suggested for a laser if somebody's out there looking for one?
My experience has been pretty limited to the Crimson Trace units, the grip activated ones, and their rail mount ones. Other guys have used some of the other rail mounted units. I'm a grip mounted activated person as far as that goes for my use. So it's kind of, Laser Max has been around for a long time. I found those used to get fouled pretty regularly. The gun reliability issues with them early on were problematic. Carbon, gun grease would get on oil, would foul the laser, make it a big giant red splash against the wall. So having an understanding of which is going to work best for you. Hey, if it's a red dot, go for the red dot. If you can afford a red dot, if you can afford an MOS type gun or a 509 tactical, or you can afford the milling on a gun to get it done. And if you can't afford that, but the red dot is your answer, get a mount from Surefire, from Barry Duick, or even Raven. A couple people make an actual mount that just dovetails into the gun, which is a very good alternative for those that can't necessarily afford or don't want to afford to spend, $450, $500 on a red dot, and then $200 on milling, the gun being gone and away, when you can buy a $100 mount and drop it in yourself.
Clint, do you deal with that at all?
Yeah, that's what I do day in, day out. I think I've probably, I don't know, I've lost count of how many red dot guns I've built. The red dot, I think, is the answer to a lot of issues that a lot of people have when it comes to, especially when it comes to training somebody that is somewhat new, because now instead of trying to line up 3 points, then line up a target and make the gun go bang and make impact, you just dot on target, squeeze the trigger. So the rest of it's just controlled from trigger control. But the dot is a great thing, day and night. I run a Trijicon RM06 on mine, and I just leave it in auto mode. Steve, I don't know if you run yours.
I hate auto mode. It is the one thing that I rallied completely against, and I wish they would have gotten rid of. Not a fan of the auto mode.
I've got weird eyes, so my eyes seem to like the tone that the dot puts out in auto mode. So I have a tendency to just kind of leave it there, and it works really good with my eyes. But I do have a terrible stigmatism in my right eye only. And I'm still able to, Lau, you saw my 25-yard group with that handgun. That was, 3 inches at 25 yards with a Glock 19. So the stigmatism isn't bad enough, but it's still, or the stigmatism's bad, but it's still okay enough that I can still shoot the gun very accurately. And I think that the armor is a great big answer to everybody that, or those out there that have a hard time. I think my wife is actually getting ready to step into one here shortly.
Chuck, do you have anything on that, man?
Chuck likes iron sights fixed.
It depends on the gun.
Big dots.
I don't have anywhere near the experience that Steve's got with the dot guns. I think that where things are going with handguns right now reminds me of dots on carbines in, say, the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's perfected yet, but I think that that's where the industry's headed, that we're going to see a lot of good things coming down the pike, and it's going to be more common to, if you remember pre-flat top ARs, the types of mounting you deal with, that's where we're at with handguns now. You have to take your gun and take it to a smith to get the best mount. I know there's like the Glock MOS and things like that, but those aren't exactly the best way to do business if you're really, really going to get into it. They'll work, they'll get you by, but I think down the pike we're going to see sort of an industry standard what we did with flat top ARs. Like, okay, this is the best way to mount it. This is kind of a standardized thing. I'm waiting for somebody to design a semi-automatic pistol where you have a partial, some sort of frame or dust cover, roll bar type arrangement where the dot sight is mounted about where they are now, but it stays stationary and the slide moves. I'm waiting for that to happen because I think that would be optimal instead of having it slide mounted. So
it's called the Geisley 6-second mount.
Yeah. I'm talking about somebody building a pistol from scratch that incorporates that type of paradigm where the sight isn't sliding back and forth. I think that's coming. Somebody that's smarter than me is going to come up with that. But I'm a big fan of dots on carbines, dots on shotguns, always have been. I think the technology for that, for those weapon systems is well matured and very, very well proven. And we're early in the game with handguns, but I think that's where it's headed. I don't know that it's necessarily a must-have, especially for a concealed carry gun, but they're definitely nice to have in certain eyesight situations, for duty type handguns, service handguns, things like that.
And in the home defense realm, I'm quite sure that would be a secure, a security blanket, if you will. But moving on down, I know got some good conversation going on in the chat. Patrick did have a question for you, Steve, I think, again. I don't know if you saw it, but
no.
Okay. He wanted to ask about do they set the dot intensity to have a bit of bloom with the light on or with the light off? I don't know.
So what
I think he's referring to I think he's referring to whenever I mentioned auto mode. You think that's what he's?
Yeah.
It depends on the model, right? I mean, Steve, how many RMRs have auto mode on them?
All the adjustables, pretty much even the non-adjustables, the Type 1s had an auto mode, an auto sensing mode on them. The Type 2 adjustables, predominantly now, the RMR 607 and 09s all have it. I'm not a fan of them. I like to... I probably can't talk about those yet. For me, the issue is lighting transitions with the auto mode and my ability to see things. So that kind of becomes problematic with light transitions between dark looking into light environments, light looking into dark, dark into light. Those reversals can be problematic with the auto sensing modes at times for some, depending on their eyesight and their abilities. But bottom line is, for a home defense gun, I like having the red dot on the pistol, just like I do a carbine or a shotgun. It's a single focal point that works amazingly well, and it's like Chuck said. We fought this in the honestly. When I think about my first flat top AR was a custom H bar that was chopped by Pat Sweeney for me back in the God, had to be 1989. But again, it's becoming a standard. There will be some kind of standardization across the board. It's already been spec'd by certain units that certain optics have a Delta Point Pro footprint or an RMR footprint or whoever. So there is a standardization that is coming. Unfortunately, not Trijicon in particular, Aimpoint has thrown a loop in that with the new pistol sight as well.
Just to move us on just a little bit, you guys can keep chatting over there in the live chat. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the input from Firearm Rack. By the way, I'll give shout out to Firearm Rack. I know, man, he's got a great channel going on. Go over and visit him. Patrick's doing a good job. Fitting Fire's on here too. Go visit Mark over there if anybody has a chance. So some of these guys, go give them some love. One of the other things that I wanted to just kind of talk about, people don't often think about the fact that you're waking up in the middle of the night, and I know there's a lot of, we're going to maybe move into the patterns of home invasions now. And Chuck, I think you could probably speak to this as well as Steve. What we're seeing as far as patterns, but most of us think of the bump in the night. And we don't think about the fact that, some of us are heavy sleepers and some of us are light sleepers, but you're waking up in the middle of the night, you're foggy and everything else, and you literally got to make a life and death decision potentially on a person or persons coming into your home and into your domicile. Can either of you or both of you speak to
that? We talked a lot about firearms. Home defense is a layered approach. When I look at modern construction, I look at people's houses, the doors, things like that. I've worked hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of burglaries. Most doors in America nowadays are what I call a one kicker. When I've had to boot a door, it's been one good kick. The frames, the locks, the door are all a unit, and you might have a deadbolt on your door, and your door's actually being held shut by half an inch of pine wood and some trim that's been tacked up to the wall to look pretty. Hardening your entry points, your doors is the first thing you need to do. Quite frankly, we had a whole rash of nighttime burglaries in Kansas is aggravated burglaries that were perpetrated on houses where the doors were unlocked. People were going to bed at night and they weren't even locking their doors. Well, we never had to lock that door in the past, or I haven't locked that door in 20 years. That's the kind of thing the bad guys are counting on. Lock your doors. Lock them. Get locks that are worth having. Have your frames beefed up. I had the rare opportunity of testing my security system one time. I would beef up the locks and frames, security strikes, things like that, on every house I rented when I was much younger. And there came a time that a rental that I had lived in several years before, we were doing a dope raid on. It was a no-knock warrant. It was a high-risk warrant. So I took my door from being a one kicker from the average dude to being a door that it took a large trained man 6 hits with a 50-pound ram to get through the door. That's the type of delay you want so that you are wide awake. You don't want to wake up with somebody standing in your bedroom. And there's been cases where that happened because people don't want doors, or they got really crappy locks, things like that. So it's a layered approach. Good locks, good doors. Alarm systems can be worthwhile. Dogs are man's best friend. Doesn't matter if it's a big dog, little dog. Dogs are your friend as far as
be loud.
The bad guys out there. So having a flashlight with your weapon of choice. Preferably a handheld light so you're not pointing at it everything you're looking at. But the layered approach is the best way to do business. It doesn't matter how cool your gun is. If you wake up and dude is standing in your bedroom over the top of you.
Yeah, at that point, you're pretty well screwed.
Yeah.
Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree fully with Chuck on those matters. You know, hardening, reinforcing, especially your, you know, exterior entranceways is always important to me. Dogs, you know, alarm systems, anything that gives you a small advantage or more time to process the information of what is occurring. I'm a very heavy / light sleeper. The weirdest noises will set me off and wake me up. You could have a herd of elephants rampaging through my house and people that I know that would stay here, whatever it would be, not a problem. One little something that did not work, I would be straight up out of bed. Pretty continual for me. I've always had large breeds of dogs, from, you know, large breeds of dogs, from Rotties to Shepherds to Chesapeake Bay Retrievers. I've always had big dogs. For myself and most people, it again, the typical, and Chuck could probably speak on this as well, the bump in the night thing has turned into the, hey, there's your front door, we're coming through it in a daytime thing. Mm-hmm. Especially because a lot of these idiots, they understand the fact that, hey, guess what? People usually aren't home during the day, or it's the, you know, the lone soccer mom who's home with the 3.2 kids. It's not going to put up much resistance, quote unquote, to the elderly being home alone or with a caregiver, whatever the case is. So daytime home invasion increases were really huge here for quite some time, and in a lot of areas. So anymore, when somebody always gives me the typical bump in the night scenario, I kind of laugh at it and go, that's the typical scenario, period. And a lot of times now it's not even just one, it's 3s and 4s.
Yes.
It's multiples, it's packs. It's a pack mentality, again, that we saw early on in the early part of the 90s. It kind of went away, came back, but at least in this general area, layered defenses, you know, I'm a big, hey, shut the bedroom door. I have locks on the bedroom door because it's just me. Again, I have layers that give me the ability to make conscious decisions. If you've ever been startled awake, you're awake. It is a pure 150%. I just drank 6 cups of caffeine, straight up adrenaline dump, awake. And for me, it's a general thing that I tell people, look, if I hear it once and it wakes me up, I need to think for a second about this. If I hear it a second time, it's probably something. So the first time is it's kind of awakening for me. The second time is the first time validation or re-verification. I'm like, okay, time to put the plans into action on this. But layers, the most prevalent thing in the world.
What do you guys think about the new alarm systems that are wireless and so on and so forth? I know one actually was invented here. Wasn't it in Topeka, Chuck?
Could be. There's several of them. I'm actually a big fan of the ones that are wireless. You can set up modern technology now. Mm-hmm. You can even have a camera in your house. We scarfed up a couple right before I left TPD. We scarfed up a couple burglars. And the odd thing was we had a burglar in progress call from a dude. The burglar was in Topeka. The reporting party victim was in Florida. And he got an alarm trip, looked on his cell phone, and had an internal camera on the house. He could see 2 dudes in his living room. So he calls the cops in Topeka and says, hey, I'm watching these dudes. This is my address, etc. We got a perimeter up around the house. You know, there's always a chance they're going to get away before we get there or leave before they get there. We rolled up. Turned out he saw one of them still moving on the camera. So we did a surround and call out, and you know, that was technology that worked really, really well. Mm-hmm. I'm a fan of some of that stuff well done. If you get some of the sensors, some of the like glass break alarms go off a lot during thunderstorms. We would get a big thunderstorm, big clap of thunder, and every glass breaker alarm in like West Topeka would go off. So now you got cops that have to respond to, you know, like 200 alarm calls. Going back to the daytime thing that Steve talked about, most of your residential burglaries are in the daytime, in my experience. That's when people who have good stuff are at work for the most part. A pattern that I noted, elderly people would often have somebody knock on the door. They don't want to talk to the guy, so they ignore it. Next thing they know, the guy's gone around back, he's kicking the door in. A lot of times that knock on the door is not a salesman that is out there. They're casing your house to see if anybody's home before they boot your door. And the reason for that is bad guys know a lot of people keep guns in their houses, at least around here they do. So kicking a door when somebody's home can get you shot. So they don't do that. The ones that are really brazen, we had a whole crew of up to 9 at a time doing the nighttime burglaries, and they were going in knowing that houses were occupied and had tactics to keep that to their advantage. And they were going into these houses that were unsecure and basically looting people's houses while they were still asleep. In some cases, they woke up in the morning, went downstairs, where's my TV, where's my VCR, things like that. They had no idea that they were burglarized. But throw that out there. If you got somebody knocking on your door during the daytime, acknowledge them. You know, even if you yell through the door, go away, I don't want to talk to you. If that was a guy casing your house, now he knows you're home. Much less likely to go try to boot your door in, just because that's been a pattern that I've seen in the past.
Do any or all of you guys carry at home?
Yeah.
I'm often carrying at home because, I'm lucky that I got a battery of guns, if you will. Some of them rather small and lightweight. I live in Central Topeka in an area where it's a decent neighborhood, but we have a lot of we got some douchebaggery walking back and forth through my neighborhood, going from one bad neighborhood to the other bad neighborhood. So I'll be armed when I'm out mowing my grass, let's say. So I've got a Jim Shorts gun. It's common for me to have a Jim Shorts gun when I'm out working on a yard, when I'm walking the dog, things like that. It's common for me to be armed at home because, like, when I get up and I'm going to work, have my coffee, take my shower, my clothes go on, my gun goes on. I don't, my holsters are comfortable, my guns are comfortable to carry. I've worn, full-size guns in something like an appendix rig, like my Keepers concealment or Dark Star gear, for up to 18 to 20 hours at a time. And it's comfortable. So it's not an inconvenience for me to be armed at home or otherwise.
The rest of you guys stay carrying at home?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. If it's not on me, it's on the table next to me when I've sat down and taken it out of the holster.
The same here.
Yes, my gun's on me all the time. The only time it's not is if I'm laying in bed. But other than that, I wake up in the morning, it's part of my dress code. Put it on, go to work, do whatever, come home, whatever. It stays on me. Never take it off until I go to bed. That's it. Everything else is in the safe. I got little kids, man. So safest place for that handgun is on my hip.
One question that I want to move to is this, and I know this was really controversial when Pincus brought it out during an NRAM, like, I don't know, a couple 3 years ago. You know where I'm going, don't you, Steve?
Oh, my head hurts. I want to tackle this so bad, but please go ahead.
Okay, well, go ahead. You know what I'm going to do.
No, go right ahead. Load it up. Load it up.
It's staging a firearm in a child's room. I'll let you loose. You can go ahead, man. Go ahead, Yeti.
So I'll front load this with, like, I actually like talking to Rob as long as it doesn't involve weapons and tactics. Other than that, I like talking to Rob. Chuck's over there dying, so I'll front load that. I've actually had some really good conversations with Rob, as long as it doesn't involve guns or tactics. Because other than that, I take it with a grain of salt. I am a huge, when I teach home defense classes, et cetera, and so forth, I am not a proponent of bringing the fight to the child's room. Why would you bring a potential gunfight into that kid's space? Knowing that now you have to not only deal with one problem, now you have to deal with, and the thing becomes, it could be a 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, whatever, stage 5 leg cleaner. All right. The other problem is I have some clients that have special needs children. I am a big advocate of, look, if they're sleeping, they're secured, let them sleep, let them be secure. I take pages from certain techniques and tactics that we use inside law enforcement and other applications for shoot house or CQB, whatever people want to call it this day, that I am better off bumping past that space, taking up a better point of domination, controlling that area via superiority of my weapons and my ability, versus taking the fight to the child's room. I think it is one of the most asinine things in the world, if I can say that, sorry. But legitimately, I feel that why? Why should you bring the problem to that space and bring a potential gunfight to them? There's no need to. Stop it. Bump past, secure the space, control everything you can. No need to alarm them and wake them, and put them into the fray.
I should have invited Pincus for this.
Oh God, no.
No, that would have been a terrible idea because you know how I feel also.
Terrible idea.
I know.
But anyway.
We're all friends with Rob, or some of us are friends with Rob, and so
I'm friends with Rob. I could have dinner with Rob any day of the week as long as we don't talk guns and tactics.
Dinner and drinks, capital D on the drinks, but for him. But Chuck, I mean, where are you at on staging? Are you in the same spot there, man?
I gotta say, yeah. If I was that worried about it, I can see the logic, but the flip side is now you would have to get to the kid's room to even employ the gun. And what if you're not even remotely close to that room when things happen? What was said earlier about having the gun on you when you have kids, having the gun on you or locked up, I think is extremely important to reiterate is a very good idea. I think it's a bold assumption that you'll make it to the kid's bedroom in order to get to the gun to employ it in certain circumstances. So yeah, I think there's some flaws in the logic.
Very flawed.
I wanted to broach the issue because it has been popularized, or we'll say it's been brought up.
It's been popularized by the masses that can't think for themselves, that belong in the Jim Jones cult. Sorry, I'm not politically. I'm not politically correct when it comes to this.
This is why I invite you on, Steve, because I know you're going to speak your mind, man, and I appreciate that. One of the things that we didn't. There's two things I still want to get to before we close shop. But one that we didn't get was over penetration, and whether or not you live in an apartment or you live in an urban area or you live in a rural area, et cetera, et cetera. Ammo we're looking at, what kind of gun, there's a lot of different factors there, and the big word that's used is over penetration. So the myth, or maybe not a myth, I don't know, is that you're going to go through the individual, it's going to pass through them, and it's going to go a mile down the street and hit grandma as she's driving down the street late at night or early in the day. Steve, you sound like you want to answer this.
Anything that is fired from a weapon, regardless if it's a handgun, carbine, or shotgun, is going to penetrate almost all residential structures in the United States. That is dependent on you hitting the light boxes, the 2x4s, the steel beams, I don't care remotely what caliber it is, it's going to penetrate if you miss. That being the key ingredient for me is if you miss. People also need to understand priority of the shot angles, such as kneeling If I'm on XYZ structure and there's people above me, I may choose to take a shot, that's lower priority that will require follow-on shots. I may choose to take a knee and shoot upward depending on the angles of the shots that I'm presented with in the spaces that I am in. But that's critical thinking skills, right? Versus the average person who doesn't go to train or practice or get this information. Yeah, penetration is a real thing. 5.56 rounds, 12 gauge, bird shot. Dear God, it all comes out of the woodwork. I've shot plenty of bird shot inside structures. I've shot plenty of 5.56 inside structures. I've put out 308.
How is bird shot reacted, by the way, in the inside of a structure?
It's amazing when it goes through drywall. It's a very nice rat hole of 7.5 shot out of an 18-inch smoothbore shotgun, and it's a nice concentric 2.5, 3-inch pattern. And when it comes out the other side and travels across the hallway to the other drywall, it's about a 3.5 to 4-inch pattern still.
Of number 7?
7.5 bird
7.5? Really?
Dublin quail loads. Have seen it. Yep.
Wow. That's interesting.
The key is don't miss, but we will miss.
Yeah.
You can mitigate that with angles. You can mitigate a lot of factors. The rounds will lose a lot of inherent velocity and energy depending on the type of load you're shooting. Nothing is an absolute, especially with ballistics.
Yeah. Chuck, have you ever seen, I mean, in your law enforcement experience, and maybe Steve, you did too when you were LE, I mean, an actual, where there was gunfire exchanged or whatever, where you saw over penetration with your own eyeballs?
Not yes and no. And typically because the bad guy got missed. I have seen in one case early on, we had a poorly designed jacket at hollow point. One of my friends put through a dude. It went through the dude, through the wall, through the privacy fence, and into a house across the alley. A FBI spec jacket at hollow point nowadays would have stayed in the dude, or if it exited, which is common, but a lot of people mistake and bullet exiting a body as over penetration. Our Spirit Gold Dot plus P 124 grain that we used in Topeka or they still use Topeka for decades, would often exit, and people were like, oh my God, the over penetration. Well, when the bullet goes 10 feet, 10 yards down range and falls to the ground, that's not a dangerous thing. The bullet exited, but it was dangerously over penetrative. You can make bad decisions if you're going to load a 9mm ball, 40 caliber ball in a carbine or a handgun. You're going to get a lot of penetration both through building materials and people. I've seen drive-by shootings where full metal jacket handgun rounds were put in the front of a house and they exited the back of the house into the backyard.
Good night, really.
Handgun jacketed hollow points that miss the bad guy will do exactly the same thing, because the jacketed hollow points need tissue, they need fluid dynamics to mushroom. So if they hit drywall, plywood, things like that, they don't mushroom. So if you miss with a handgun jacketed hollow point, you're looking at that level of penetration as well, if you don't hit something substantial along the way. Safer rounds are things like 55 grain, like ready tap, soft, some of the varmint bullets in 223 rounds. I'm not as hardcore about, bashing on the idea of bird shot in certain circumstances. One reason is because there's a lot of bird shot in between, like a number 8 trap and a dove load, and something like a BBB Magnum goose load or a Magnum turkey load. I have seen some extremely destructive, immediately fatal homicides perpetrated with something like a number 4 duck and pheasant load, high brass pheasant load out of a shotgun at close range. So I think in knowing your circumstances, analyzing the scenario. I'll give you one. I was in a light construction, modern apartment building, and my shot from my bedroom down the hallway to my front door would have led directly across the little landing at the top of the stairs into my neighbor's door and down her hallway. So when I was living in that apartment for a while, I kept my shotgun loaded with high brass number 4s. Knowing the limitations of doing that with the shot that I was presented, or I would bring my patrol rifle home because I had access to 55 grain tap. That was one of our loads that we had at work. It wasn't a good patrol rifle load, but for that situation, limiting, the bullet would start to fragment on the first thing it hit, so it would start to limit penetration. But the panacea answers you hear from people will just carry this, and you get stupid stuff like laser safety slugs and garbage like that.
Thunder zaps.
Yes, yeah. Every few years, somebody thinks they invented light for caliber, high velocity, fragmenting handgun ammunition.
R.I.P. baby.
It's never been done before. Glazers go back to the 60s, MagSafe, et cetera, et cetera. They're all horrible idea.
Terrible.
Yeah. And I know those are some of the concerns that come with home defense, and I hope we've raised some of them. The last thing I want to raise, and then I'll let you guys add it here because we're getting after 9 o'clock. The last thing is Chuck, we'll rely on you and Steve on the legal eagle area here of castle doctrine. I know it's probably different in Michigan than it is in Kansas. I'm not sure because I don't know Michigan law. In Kansas, castle doctrine is pretty liberal, if you will, using that term in the right way. Generous, we'll put it that way. So without giving out legal advice, we'll put it that way, let's give some parameters to folks about castle doctrine within maybe Michigan. Steve, if you want to start, and then elsewhere, here in Kansas.
While it's pretty generous here, I still advise people to consult a good attorney who is their specialty, to understand more in-depth the parameters and what can be expected. And that's where I leave it for most people. While I tell them then they have an understanding of to defend their person, their life, etc. I'm also of the standpoint where I tell them, hey, let them take your 42-inch TV set, and when you claim it on your insurance, get an 80-inch. That's, no property is worth the thousands, tens of thousands of dollars you're going to expend on these issues. But again, I want to reserve one thing. I want to let Chuck handle this one some more, and because there's another topic that I want to touch on real briefly that doesn't often get looked at.
Very good. Chuck?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV.
But you look like one.
Smart. I hope not.
No, God, no. He looks way more honest and respectful.
So I'm flipping to another screen, and if people haven't done it, smart people need to read Kansas Statutes Annotated 21-5223. Defensive dwelling, place of work, or occupied vehicle, no duty to retreat. A lot of people think that gives them the right to just shoot somebody on their property. I will read subsection B. A person is justified in the use of deadly force to prevent or terminate unlawful entry into or attack upon any dwelling, place of work, or occupied vehicle if such person reasonably believes that such use of force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to such person or another. So when you read that, basically that's your defense of self or others. Your deadly force law is the same in your house or outside of your house. You can use a measured level of force to stop an entry to your house, but you can only use deadly force when deadly force is being offered, and it has to be reasonable. I've seen people get themselves into trouble in a number of scenarios because it's not a magic saying to go, I was in fear for my life. that has to be a reasonable fear. I hear people talk about, well, if somebody's coming into my blah, blah, blah. You better be able to articulate reasonable grounds for what you're talking about. I know of cases where people went outside, what Steve was talking about, going outside of your house because somebody's on your property, breaking into your barn, breaking into your car is a horrible idea.
Yes.
One reason is tactics. You don't know who else is out there. I'll tell you that 9-man burglary crew we had in Topeka, one of the things they would do is if you had a low roof, like a garage, they were putting a lookout with a shotgun on the roof for people that might come out after them. Are you ready to be ambushed from your own rooftop as you step outside? The other thing is there have been cases of like autistic kids, little old men with Alzheimer's being killed by people who are taking the fight outside and thinking that they can utilize deadly force to like stop a break into their car, things like that. Even if you're not prosecuted, are you the kind of person that can live with taking the life of a little old man with Alzheimer's who is lost and now he's at the wrong house and he thinks it's his house, that's why he's trying to get in. So anyway, just smart people can read. Kansas statutes annotated. I suggest they do some reading, and as Steve suggests, perhaps talk to an attorney or somebody qualified if they're confused on this stuff.
To address both of that, I've been actually a legal research assistant for several years and knew exactly that statute and have done some explanations. We'll put it that way. The other thing I would say is to read this book by Masad Ayub and others by Masad. And if people can't, he says CYA, and most people think, oh, CYA, I know what that means. Well, no, he says, can you articulate? That's what he means by CYA. Can you sit on a stand and be able to articulate if you have to, or in an interrogation room amongst detectives, to be able to articulate why you just smoked a dude in your house? Can you do that?
Absolutely.
And that's why I say this book, and I'm a big Moss fan, and so if you, this is like $13 off Amazon or whatever it is. I have it thinking all written up and everything else. And my attorney, by the way, my personal attorney, who the same thing. He told me the very same thing. He looked at me and said, "Law, I'm just going to tell you one thing, CYA," and that was when I learned it. And it was like, I was like, "Well, cover your ASS." And he's like, "No. Can you articulate it? Mm-hmm. And are you in fear of death or great bodily harm? Period. I don't care whether, like you said, Steve, if they're stealing your TV or whatever, you got to be able to articulate why you smoked the dude." Yeah. And that's what it comes down to.
The big point that I see going off this topic is, Chuck, you absolutely correct in this, but the one thing that is often missed and overlooked for home defense scenarios is your medical plan.
Yeah.
Your ability to have accessibility to a tourniquet and or pressure dressing of some sort or gauze. Mm-hmm. There's specific ways I have tourniquets mounted to my long guns. I have a IFAC hanging off the bedroom door. I have an IFAC in other parts of the house that is available if need be. But having the ability to have medical on you, on your person, or stage, like, hey, I'll put medical in the kids' room if I had them, absolutely. Not a gun per se, but I'll put medical in that space. But I have the ability to perform, because this isn't always just a shooting. It could be a gunfight or an exchange of ballistics between 2 parties or 3 parties or 4 parties. And the thing is, most people overlook that and think, oh, no, it's not a thing to be overlooked. If you carry it on the street, which you should, if you carry it on your person and in your vehicle, you better have it in your structure, your dwelling. And you better have it to a point where, A, it's accessible, it's on you or within relative confines, Because truthfully, if it's a good arterial hit, you've got 15 to 30 seconds, roughly, depending, before bleed out or loss of consciousness. Tourniquets don't always work for gut shots because it's kind of hard to put a tourniquet around the stomach. Just saying, there's particular tourniquets available for those. But again, you have 4 limbs and the ability to be impacted in several locations. So if you do not have at least a tourniquet per se stage on your long gun, either on the sling or stock or forend, whatever you choose, I don't care, or a compression dressing the same way or together, you're wrong. And if your family is not versed in this as well, you're wrong. That will most likely be a very big deciding factor in an outcome for some people, because you're not always going to have the advantage just because it's your dwelling. Just because you own it doesn't mean you own it any longer when somebody else occupies that space. I don't care how good you are. Everything's a statistic until it's not. So that's another big thing for people to think about in their planning of their home defense layout. Not just a gun, because cool, guns are great, but medical is key in knowing how to use it. That is a big one.
Agree wholeheartedly, and that's something that, people make fun of me. Actually, I have an EDC bag, and then I have a bag that I keep in the truck, and then I have another bag that I keep in another vehicle, and so on and so forth. And they're like, "Dude, why do you have so much medical crap everywhere?" And they're all this stuff, and I'm like, "Well," and the next thing you know, they'll be asking, "Oh, do you have a Band-Aid, or do you have this, or do you have that?" And I have TQs and all these, and everything, and a full IFACs. And except for I don't have a chest seal in any of them, but and the reason being is that thing, and I have one in the house that's fully accessible right there. Actually, 2 of them, and for that, and it has pressure bandage and so on and so forth. Clint, I know you've had to just to bring this, and we're bringing it to a close here, y'all, but Clint has actually had to deal with this firsthand in a car accident situation within the last 2.5 months. He was on the phone with me when it happened, and so can you speak about that at all?
Sure.
Okay.
Basically, I was for those of you that don't know, Wichita I-35 is a main thoroughfare that runs right through the middle of Wichita. And in the mornings and in the evenings, it can get super busy, and people are stupid and they drive like idiots. So what we basically had was I would say probably early 20s female that had just had surgery, and was somewhat doped up and was on her way to work. And she impacted, that concrete barrier that's between the highway and the off-ramp. She impacted that head on at 60 miles an hour. It threw her into the steering wheel, into the windshield, and up into the top bar of the car. Split her head open so badly that I could not make out what ethnicity she was or anything for a few minutes until I got her cleaned up. I couldn't even find the wound for a while because it was there was so much blood. But basically what ended up happening is I was first on the scene. I ended up going through almost every bit of my gauze that was in my bag that I carry with me every day. And then once I found out where everything was, I got pressure dressing on it and got everything nice and tight. By then, EMS had showed up, and it was kind of funny because I'm sitting there cleaning her up and trying to keep her calm and checking her over, and EMS stood over my shoulder and told me, "Keep going, you're doing good." So, if little things like that are more important than people realize, especially when you actually use it. And Lyle was there for the adrenaline dump that I had afterwards. Yeah. I was covered in blood first off, but I ended up going home and just kind of chilling and relaxing at home for a little while. But yeah, it's something there that I firmly believe that if you can take a life, you can save a life, and you're going to save a life a lot more than you're going to take a life. Yeah. So, get trained on medical. That's why besides the handgun classes and the mindset classes that we do, one of the most important ones that we do is medical.
I used a tourniquet after a car wreck, rollover wreck, in the 80s. Fortunately, they were teaching tourniquets, pressure dressings, things like that in Army Basic when I went through in '82. We didn't have store-bought tourniquets, but I was able to. This gal had been ejected from a car, hit the guardrail, gashed her leg open, and was squirting pretty good. And I had a couple Army cravats that I was able to use one of them for a tourniquet. I lost a mini mag light out of the deal because it's what I used for the windlass. But having the knowledge to build a tourniquet right there on the spot saved that gal's life. That was, I forget, 83, 84 time frame. Well before the modern era of tourniquet use and triple C and things like that. And that's definitely a lesson that stuck with me.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Anything else that you guys want to add real quick, like before we get ready to
go? Be smart, get educated on your laws, be proficient with your weapons, be proficient with your guns in low light conditions with handheld and or weapon lights, especially handhelds. Pay attention to your environment, secure the structure as best as possible without going overboard, and, you know, not only worry about yourself, but worry about your significant other if there is one, because most likely they're the ones that will be home at the time things occur. Just because you're out training doesn't mean they shouldn't be.
And speaking of training, by the way, that's where I'm going to go next for you guys to give a plug. Steve, you got some stuff coming up. There's people, that are watching this from around the nation or can be in the future, in the near future. And you're right now scheduled to be in Kansas right now. Give us a plug, man, for where you're going, what you're going to be doing, how they can get a hold of you at Sentinel Concepts.
SentinelConcepts.com. I'm on the World Wide Web, Instagram, Facebook, all the usual social media sources. Current travels have me teaching in Michigan this weekend, then Ohio, then Colorado, coming back home, going back to the East Coast for some contract stuff, leaving there, and I will be in the great state of Kansas currently sometime in mid-September. I think we're looking at early September.
Yeah. So I think it's 21st, 22nd, somewhere along there.
I believe so.
23rd.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
You said, Derek, what was it again?
September 22nd and 23rd.
I'm glad he knows my schedule.
Yeah. He wants to be in your class. And that's going to be out of Spear Point Ranch tentatively right now. A Spear Point Ranch out by Salina. Those of you who are in Kansas know that's out central Kansas area. So if at all possible, man, get on sentinelconcepts.com and sign. I'm going to be out of town, unfortunately, for my anniversary and so on and so forth. So I unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it. But it's a critical handgun employment class. Isn't that right, Fisher?
That is correct.
Yeah. So I think that'll be a good class, and maybe you might be back in 19, maybe in the state.
Good possibility. I would also tell people that are in the state of Kansas, they're missing out on a fantastic resource having Chuck there.
Yes.
The dude is definitely on my list of people that I would love to get in a class with at some point. Chuck is a phenomenal peer in the industry and just a wealth of knowledge that often, people always look to the super high profile touch the magic guys. Not myself, obviously. I'm not one of them. And that's great, but they should actually seek out the local awesome resources such as Chuck. You've got a legendary lawman there in the state who is phenomenal and well-versed. That dude should really be looking at local-wise.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him to tell me when he's going to go somewhere so I can follow him.
I know, it's tough.
Man.
Chuck is legendary, and I know that you have some stuff coming up here just right offhand?
I suffer. Very kind of you, Steve. I appreciate it a great deal. Appreciate that a lot. Steve is on my list of guys I need to train with. Definitely, superb instructor, solid dude in the industry, no BS, not flash, not edutainment. So that's why he's definitely on my list. I have my next training is I'm going to be at John Murphy's place, FPF, in Culpeper, Virginia. I'm doing a weekend there. I'll be down in September in Dallas with Wayne Dobbs, Daryl Bolke doing a revolver week.
Awesome guys.
Yeah, good dudes. Revolver roundup. I've got a class scheduled in the Philadelphia area at Annette Evans' place. It's a non-shooting class. It's all going to be software, not hardware on that one. Locally, I don't have a lot going on. Quite frankly, I find, unfortunately, Kansas can be a tough place to sell training. Buck, who wasn't able to be with us tonight, obviously, has a superb range over by Wamego. He's a very gifted instructor, has some high quality training, and he has a difficult time selling low price classes, which makes me kind of sad because the negative, we often see people muddle their way through home defense or self-defense scenarios, but universally when I see negative outcomes, shooting your spouse, shooting your kid, shooting the Alzheimer neighbor by your house, shooting yourself, things like that. Being killed by the police, that's one I just saw a couple of days ago. Being killed by the police responding to the home invasion. All of these negative outcomes would not have been solved by the coolest gun you can have. They would have all been solved by training and having all your crap in one bag as far as mindset and training and having those problems worked out ahead of time. So avoiding that sort of thing is where the training really pays off. Yeah, I started rambling there and I kind of forgot where I was going with that.
Yeah, and folks can get a hold of you, Chuck, at agiletraining.com, isn't it? Or is it?
My company's Agile Training and Consulting, and my website's www.agiletactical.com. I'm also on Facebook. I have a very pathetic Instagram, but it's there. I've got both a business Agile Facebook page, and I have a website itself where I've got a calendar for training. One of the things that I do locally is off the book stuff. I have several clients that I work with. Some people are intimidated to go to class because they're so new or they don't know where to begin. So I will do client-centered, needs-based training and consulting. I have worked with people who are not into guns, who want a home defense plan. I've squared them away on that. Steve's summary earlier on what to do and what you should be looking at was superb. I'll throw out, not everything in the world is tactical. I often ask people if you've got, they might have a suppressed M4, with an infrared laser and nods and the whole bit, and I'll ask them, do you have a fire extinguisher in your house? And how often do I get an affirmative answer out of that? And what are you more likely to have your house burned down around you or be invaded by a Mexican drug cartel? Which is it? So yeah, just throwing that out there. Realistic assessment of your threats is a thing. I like buying cool guy gear and it's fun, but we should be realistic in what we're looking at and making sure that not as tactical stuff is taken care of, like door locks, making sure that we have an early warning system to employ this stuff that we've got, that kind of thing. And I think a lot of that is where the training aspect really pays for itself.
Awesome. So, and Clint, do you guys have down there in Wichita have anything coming up?
Tornadoes.
Tornadoes.
That part of the season is past. So
it is pretty well past for us. Thank God.
Steve, if you live down here or at least came down and visited us, you would realize that very fast. You're safe after July, it seems like. But if you get here in April or May, you're screwed.
Yeah, but the biggest tornado in Topeka history happened in November, man.
That's true. That's true. It is Kansas. Anything can happen. As far as anything coming up, I'm trying to put together another medical class. I'm going to try and get it going hopefully by next month. and get it up and running. It'll be just a local deal. And then as far as handgun classes or just instructor classes, I don't have anything really coming up. I've been really busy in the shop lately, building guns. And so I don't have anything exactly coming up, but we're going to put something together, I'm sure, for the years up.
And you do have a class.
The fundamentals class I've done is is unlike any other. So far, everybody that's taken it is, taken several classes from several other people, and they can't seem, they don't. I guess it kind of baffles me, but a lot of the stuff that they get in my class, they don't seem to get elsewhere, and I'm not sure where things are going wrong, or maybe we're just not paying attention. But we're going to try and get that class to go a little more mainstream and a little more, schedule them out a little more, get a little more of them out there, get more people to start getting these, and then start spreading the word to get around to other instructors. I can't stand going to one instructor. I don't know about y'all, but I want to get around. I want to learn from everybody. And I would tell everybody the same thing. I tell all my students, if you want to go train with Steve, go with Steve. If you want to go to Chuck, go to Chuck. If you want to go, whoever, go to everybody. Take what you want, keep it, get rid of the rest. So,
and I'll put a plug in. John Correa, he's on vacation right now in Panama, of all places. He's a
we're taking a class with him in what, October?
Yeah, we got him coming in October 19th and 20th. In Manhattan. So
that'll be fun.
Yeah, and I know Steve, you know John, and Chuck, you know John too. So he's the class act. So looking forward to having him for Survive the Fight. But so there's opportunities in the state. October, John Correa. September, hopefully, Steve, you can fill that class up out at Spear Point, and then anytime. Maybe you feel kind of intimidated or whatever. Like, I think that's a really, really good point, Chuck. That you, and a really good service that you're putting out there, brother. Hey, if you feel like I really don't know about a class thing, but I'd like to have one-on-one time. Get a hold of Chuck, and if he's willing to do that, that's awesome. And Buck, who's not able to be with us tonight from Defense Midwest, because he was busy all day out on the farm. The guy's been in law enforcement for 30 years and also had a large farming operation. So he does have some awesome stuff. I think he's still got, who does he, Chuck? He's got some guys coming in, and I can't remember.
He's got Dan Brokos coming
in September.
Coming pretty soon.
Yeah,
Dan's a buddy, great guy.
Yeah, and so I mean, that's defensemidwest.com. If we can plug him. So there's all kinds of stuff, and if y'all want to get after it, please look around and do it. And I know I was looking at Firearm Rack over here in the chat. Get training in all caps. Couldn't agree more. Get some training, and get some legit training. By the way, there are some people out there that could scare us all, but let's stay positive and get some training, get a plan, work the plan. Man, we've got some great input from everybody tonight. I really appreciate every one of you guys and the input that you've given. Chuck, man, I appreciate you and staying up. I know you're tired, so get some rest, brother. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. And Clint, as always, and Derek for hanging in there too. You guys, man, I appreciate it. So check them out at their various websites and things, williamsgunworks.com, sentinelconcepts.com, agiletactics.com. Is that right? Did I get it right, Chuck?
Agile Tactical.
agiletactical.com. And then on the Facebook too. So please, man, get in touch with these guys, and I'm indebted to y'all for joining us tonight. So for now, I hope you can learn more about home defense from this very episode of Live Fire, and I hope you can go away with something. And as always, stay Kansas proud. We'll talk to y'all later.